It is a delight today, a double delight for me to be sitting at the remote interview desk at the home of Mr. Charles L. Smith, one of Warren County's most distinguished veterans of World War II. And I say a double delight because we're happy to have along with us Jonathan Womack of Community Insider, reaching out to television viewers and particularly television viewers interested in what's happening right here in their own communities. And it is an honor in many, many ways to talk to Mr. Smith because I have always thought he was one of the finest gentlemen ever to walk in Warren County, honorable, decent, someone who really loves his community and loves his neighbors. And
Grace Family Pharmacy announces new medication packaging service. It provides a simpler, safer medication experience through convenient, personalized packaging using the latest in pharmacy robotics. We're located at 357 West Main Street. Our phone number is 931-473-6418.
McMinnville, you're a great place to be. McMinnville, Tennessee.
The MyUsage app is a way to conveniently pay online, anytime, day or night. You can also come by any Caney Fork Electric office and sign up for the prepay option available using the MyUsage app. Know exactly how much electricity is used each day and the cost. Best of all, no monthly bill. You can set up email or text alerts, keep track of your usage, and pay your bill, all with the MyUsage app from Caney Fork. Caney Fork Electric, keeping you informed.
Communitytvtn is brought to you by Security Federal Savings Bank, proudly serving the community we call home.
Dr. Pepper. Good for life, good for the community.
Welcome to another edition of Community Insider. Join us as we travel Middle Tennessee, uncovering history and experiencing the adventure of unique stories and events coming to you inside your community.
good day and welcome to this special edition of Focus on McMinnville Public Radio, WCPI 91.3. This is Bill Zechman, one of the volunteer producers at McMinnville Public Radio, and it is a delight today, a double delight for me to be sitting at the remote interview desk at the home of Mr. Charles L. Smith, one of Warren County's most distinguished veterans of World War II. And I say a double delight because we're happy to have along with us Jonathan Womack of Community Insider, reaching out to television viewers and particularly television viewers interested in what's happening right here in their own communities. And it is an honor in many, many ways to talk to Mr. Smith because I have always thought he was one of the finest gentlemen ever to walk in Warren County, honorable, decent, someone who really loves his community and loves his neighbors, and obviously someone who loved his country. Many years ago, during World War II, we're going to be talking about his experiences growing up in rural Warren County, in the Midway community, back then known probably more commonly as Jericho. And we'll be talking about that, his induction into the Army and how he made a swift transition over to the U.S. Navy. Mr. Smith was one of those courageous, intrepid souls in the Navy's amphibious service. They were the first on shore in the invasions that they undertook and we're going to be talking particularly about the Italian campaign from 1943 into 1944, and just how crucial and vital that was to the success of the Allied effort against the fascists, both in Italy and in Germany. So we'll be talking more about that, but Mr. Smith, thank you so much for making this time to be with us today. We appreciate it. Mr. Smith, you have celebrated a number of birthdays. You were born in 1925, right?
Yes, sir.
And still in reasonably good health, I'm glad to say.
Physically, yes.
And I would say mentally too.
Well,
very, very alert. You brought up in what nowadays we call the Midway community, sort of in that northwest quadrant or northeast quadrant of Warren County, but back then they called it Jericho. Now the only physical remembrance of Jericho now is Jericho Church of Christ, but it was known as Jericho at the time, right?
Yes, but I was really in a different community. I was in at that time, Greens Crossroads. And today it is part of the Midway community.
Okay, now Greens Crossroads, is that the same thing as the crossroads at the old Schrock store, or is that?
It's 2 miles towards McMinnville from the Schrock store.
Okay, with relation to Hennessy Bridge Road, where would it be?
Yeah, on beyond Hennessy Bridge Road towards McMinnville.
Okay, I'll figure it out. We won't burden our TV viewers and our WCPI listeners as I'm cogitating on this. Tell us, Mr. Smith, about growing up in rural Warren County from 1925 on up through the time you were drafted into the Army. This was an agricultural area. So were you doing farming, or
Yes.
what were you doing?
Yes, we was growing mainly hay crops and corn and things of that nature.
Mechanization of farming really took off. I guess John Deere and the farm equipment and farm implement companies were pioneers in that area. But did you grow up in the area of the mule-drawn or horse-drawn plows and
Yes.
hay rakes? And
I never knew what a tractor was until I was 17 or 18 year old.
what did you think about when you saw your first tractor in action?
I couldn't believe it. They replaced mules.
Yeah.
Tractors was a thing to have, I know. But we never had nothing but mules when I was a boy, really.
Well, you know, mules and horses have helped tame America, helped cultivate American fields, harvest timber in American woodlands,
Yes.
clear roads.
Lot of timber being cut and logs and lumber being made, you know.
And Warren County is certainly an important part of not just the agricultural, but also the timber industry. What about your schooling days? What about your early schooling here?
Well, I started to school in the Schrock store area. It was known as Derrygo at that time.
Derrygo.
Today it's known as Midway.
Okay.
But Derrygo, my mother was a teacher and started me in the first grade at old Derrygo, and after 1 year, that closed school was tore down and a new one built down at the Midway Community House now, and the community ground, and it replaced. It's known was New Derrygo, and since then, Midway was built and replaced Derrygo, Cambridge, Irving Morris College, and about 2 teacher schools.
Okay. What about when the war started? Of course, the war started September 1st of 1939 when Hitler's Nazis invaded Poland, but the United States didn't get involved until the Pearl Harbor attack by the Imperial.
December the 7th, when Roosevelt declared war.
Right, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, and that's when the United States entered the war on the side of the Allies. It was a situation where the fascists in Europe, Hitler and Benito Mussolini, had really developed plans for the takeover of Europe and colonization of much of the rest of the world, including starting with Africa.
Yes.
So this was a conflict that put not only Europe in danger, but really the rest of the world, particularly since the Japanese Empire got involved on the other side of the globe.
Yes. Well, you know, President Roosevelt declared war on Japan and Germany at the same time, December the 7th, 41.
Right. So essentially, the United States was fighting a war on two fronts.
Yes.
Germany wound up, after being initially allied with Joseph Stalin and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, now known as Russia. Germany was allied with Russia and then turned on Stalin, basically just turned their treaty of cooperation upside down. Hitler invaded Russia, so Hitler had himself a two-front war in the West and in the East.
Yes, 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 he did. That was America was a while getting anything done in World War II. They didn't have a start. They had to do a lot before they could get started.
Weren't quite prepared for war.
That's right.
We had a lot of pacifists, a lot of people in the United States that wanted to keep America out of the war.
Yes, yeah.
And it was quite an effort to persuade a lot of people. But after the Japanese attacked, the vote in Congress was virtually unanimous. We're going to war.
Yes, they were. That's right.
Okay. Now, do you remember the day you got your dear friend and neighbor letter from the draft board?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well,
I guess you went to the mailbox down at the end of the driveway on a country road, and you saw a letter that looked kind of official.
That's right.
Did you have any idea that maybe that's greetings from the draft board?
No, I had no idea. No idea.
Where did you report when you?
Fort Overthrow, right out of Georgia, right out of Chattanooga.
Right.
Fort Overthrow, Georgia.
Okay, did you have your basic training there? Or
No,
you moved elsewhere for that?
I was first put in the Army.
Right.
And the officials there asked for 71 young people that's 18 and that 20-year-old to volunteer for the Navy, and I volunteered. And I took my basic at Bainbridge, Maryland, right out of Baltimore.
Was there anything in your upbringing and early education in what's now the Midway community that would have prepared you for this totally different life in the U.S. Navy in wartime?
Not a thing. I'd hardly knew of the Navy. The biggest reason I went in the Navy, my brother was drafted about 6 weeks before I was, and he got in the Navy. Okay. And when they asked for volunteers, somehow I volunteered.
You raised your hand.
I don't know why, but
okay. Seemed like a good deal at the time, right?
Yeah. I thought it was better of the two.
Okay. Now, when you completed your basic training with the Navy and got ready for actual deployment overseas, what was your first assignment? Where were you first?
We were sent down to Norfolk, Virginia. No, where the old Navy is up there in Virginia.
Yeah, it's the Hamptons Crossroads area.
Yeah. Anyway, and the Navy Department had just started something new. They was organizing some beach battalions, and we were put in this beach battalion of 450 people, and it was put together to make landings, invasions, and go ashore first. And we was in this 8th Beach Battalion, and we had to go ashore in the first 3 waves, and those waves were 8 minutes apart. And I was in the 3rd wave. This was in Italy, Salerno, Italy.
Right.
And we went in there and we stayed there. The Germans had it occupied at that time.
Right.
And they were in Salerno was located right at kind of the foot of a little mountain. And they was operating in and out of cave.
Yeah, that's sort of on the southwest coast.
Yeah.
Right.
And they'd come out every day at noontime and we'd have a little battle. And we stayed there about 3 months, I guess, till we got it secured. And then we was sent up to France, up to a large town up there, and we stayed there until we got reassigned, and we went. We went to another place up there for a while, and then the war was getting nearly over. Not nearly over, but way along, getting along, way along. And then we was made the invasion at southern France, and we was there. We was there for about 6 months until it got secured over. And then the war was getting close to over with Germany.
Yeah, we're talking about the early spring of '45, right?
Yeah, and so we was packed up and sent to the Pacific. U.S. was going to take on Japan and invade Hawaii, invade.
We're sort of working out of Hawaii. Yeah.
And we was sent to the Mariana Islands, which is Guam, Tinian, and Saipan. And so we was trained there for Saipan was going to invade Germany, but President Truman used the atomic bomb and dropped a couple of them and asked Tokyo over there, was he Tojo, was he ready to surrender? And he said no. And next day he dropped another, and so that brought the World War II to the end.
Yeah, that's you've covered a lot of ground and a lot of time in a short period of time. Fighting your way up the Italian peninsula, that was difficult. I think Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of Britain, basically called it. I think his quote was the soft underbelly of Europe. The U.S. general in charge of his Lieutenant General Mark W. Clark in charge of Operation Avalanche. You served under Lieutenant General Clark,
5th Army.
Right, exactly. And he said not exactly the soft underbelly. He said it was one tough gut. He said it was hard going. Getting through Italy. You had Germans and you had the Italian fascist army. So it was fighting along the way. It wasn't a cakewalk.
Yeah. Yes, it was quite a career there.
Yeah. How did the locals greet you? What was their reaction? I think history shows that support for Mussolini was in decline at this point in the war. Mussolini was losing a lot of popularity, and finally his career was ended with the coup. And
I wasn't that familiar with Mussolini or any of the leaders. We was just.
But the townspeople, when you went through the towns and cities, how did they respond to these Yankee invaders?
Well,
Were you considered liberators or what?
Well, I guess that's the word for it. But that's what it was anyway, liberating them. But anyway, I don't know how their reaction really was, you know.
Probably the Italians in Mussolini's time had been pretty well brainwashed, just like the Russians under Putin had been brainwashed, because they're basically the media outlets, newspapers and radio at the time, before television, all controlled by the government.
Yeah.
And if they weren't controlled by the government, they had to toe the party line.
Yes.
For their own safety and survival, I guess. When you got to France, what kind of conditions was France pretty well wrecked in the war when you got there, or what was the situation?
Well, it was easier in France than it was after we got settled down. Actually, it was. We could get around better, you know, and they seemed to accept us better too than any place I'd been, you know. But then, of course, we didn't stay in France after the invasion too long. When it got settled down, the invasion, they sent us to the Pacific, and we was out in
What was going through your mind? I know that at the time, of course, this is known to history, might not have been so well known to the general American population, but the war planners at the Department of the Army, it was called then, now the Defense Department, had calculated horrific casualties on the American side.
We thought it was told it'd be 1 million. If it hadn't been for the atomic bomb, we would have lost 1 million troops. So that was a great thing that happened for us. Yeah.
Where were you? What was your reaction? Do you remember hearing the news about the atomic bomb?
Well, really, we didn't have no news to speak of, but yeah, I heard it, and it was everybody received it well. All military people did. They was glad, proud of it.
Yeah, with some relief, I would imagine.
Yeah, it sure was. It knew we was going home.
Yeah, going home. And you knew the end had come. You have a big album of pictures, and I want to just take a couple of them, just kind of randomly here. See one of you and my late beloved father-in-law Tony Patrick. This looks like this might have been an occasion. Maybe I'm looking at the surroundings, maybe at First Baptist Church possibly. But here's a picture, and maybe Jonathan can put this up for the TV viewers. I see some sailors here, looks like 7 of them. They all look happy to me. This was the night before you shipped out to go back home, is that right?
Yeah, that was the night before we was discharged.
Okay.
In San Francisco.
Oh, okay. So you were already back on American soil.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't see a sad face among them. They all look happy.
No, they was not. Well, yeah. Everybody was well pleased.
Yeah. This picture of Tony Patrick, like I say, my late father-in-law, wife Patricia's father, and you, 2 happy people. After the war, you and other veterans stayed in touch. It was a strange thing about you and Tony Patrick. You were in many of the places during the course of the war, but you never came in contact with each other.
We were at 3 different places: Naples, Italy, Salerno, Italy, and southern France. All at the same places, but never made contact. Never knew Tony till I got back home. Fine guy.
Well, I think yes, and thank you for saying that. I totally agree. A very fine person. When you look back on it, and our time's getting away from us for this interview, Mr. Smith, but when you look back on it, of course, you, like so many other young American men, were drafted into service, but you served with honor. You served with obviously great courage. Being in that amphibious force, you all were the first people on the beachhead. You got there first, and whatever resistance there was, you had to deal with the resistance, so you were under fire. But when you look back on it and consider the level and intensity of American patriotism and resolve and just valor, I'm going to ask you for an opinion. How does that compare with our maybe social and political environment today? What would you say? I guess the bottom line question, Mr. Smith, if we were confronted with that kind of existential threat again here in the year 2022, could we do what we did 1941 to 1945?
There'd have to be a big change in my way of seeing it before we could. It just seemed like 100% different today than it was in our day. I just doubt that we could ever get back like we once were. In fact, I feel sure we couldn't, or we wouldn't.
There's a tremendous amount of political division and rancor and just animosity that's dividing America, and I'm sure people that went into the services in 1941 to defend democracy and freedom here and around the world, they might have had their political differences, but apparently they all composed their differences and fought side by side.
No comparison in that day and today. It's just 100% different. It's opposite. I don't know where we could ever get back to times like we had years ago. I know we had tough times too.
Yeah.
But the feelings of people is not today like it was then. I mean, you had respect for the country more then, and you don't have all the problems, the type problems we are having today than we had then.
Yeah. Well, we are in different times, I guess we might say, but I know that every American living today and those who lived from 1945 did owe just an infinite debt of gratitude to you and all the others who served. So just as one citizen who's thankful to have been born in the United States of America and enjoy the freedoms and the protections and the opportunities we have, I certainly thank you. And I feel like I can say that on behalf of our community. Yeah. So we thank you, Mr. Smith.
Well, I'll say this. Since I retired, I've had more nice things said to me and shared with me than I ever expected, to tell you the truth. So we've got a lot of good people here, and several that's not that good. But
we do have a lot of good people, and you and I are thankful for them. But and you're certainly one of them. People ought to be nice to you because you're a very nice person. But we are completely out of time. Charles L. Smith, thank you so much for being with us on this event. Thank you for your service and for your citizenship here in Warren County and America. This has been a special focus presentation on McMinnville Public Radio 91.3 WCPI in tandem with Community Insider and producer Jonathan Wamick. For Community Insider and WCPI, this is volunteer producer Bill Zeckman.